Hello and welcome to episode number 5 of Embody Your Truth. I'm Silvia Camerini. I'm an artist, a mystic coach, and the creatrix of the Heartstorming, which is a path of renewal and rebirth through the energy and the portal of the heart. And in the name and honoring this path, I've started this series interviewing people who are embodying their truth, which is the core essence of my message of this path. And I'm sharing with you their stories so that you can be inspired, motivated, encouraged to do the same, to embody your truth, wherever it is for you. Today, I got here with me Bob Jayco from Australia. Hello, Bob, and welcome.
Hello, Silvia, and I'm really delighted to be here and talking to you and your wonderful audience, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, me too. I'm going to introduce yourself briefly to our audience, and then we'll dive deeper into who you are and which is your mission, your vision, and how you are embodying your own truth. So let me read you something about Bob. Bob has over 45 years of experience in the field of alternative and energy medicine, coaching and mentoring in intuitive development. He has taught in the field of spirituality and conscious leadership in business and sponsored and trained groups in internal creativity techniques. Also, Bob has a highly developed personal intuitive skills, which allows him to see and to recognize, maybe to sense conditions that many cannot. So Bob is also known to be a channel for a higher form of wisdom and consciousness called Signals of Love, Soul. And he's currently the editor-in-chief of CoCreation magazine, which is an online global publication dedicated to informing and teaching about co-creation and unity consciousness. And he is also the founder of CoCreation Global, Bob, which is an organization with a mission to create a movement of 300 million transformation agents to assist and sponsor a planetary awakening back to a love-centric experience. And this is what touched me the most, because it's so close to the Heartstorming message as well, to live a life based on the heart, through the portal of the heart. So, Bob, congratulations for all these things you are embodying and for sharing your mission with the world. I'd love to know from you, to start and to inspire people, how did you arrive here? How, were you able to truly feed your talents, your skills, and allow them to, for you to become who you are today? Because you have so many things, so powerful things.
That's actually a whole book.
Yeah.
But I'll try to condense it into a short period of time. And to do that, I've got to roll back to about the age of 10. Now, everybody's journey has a launch pad, a critical point, a place where some events, some occurrence, or their environment created a situation which allowed them to find a different option, find a different place in themselves or of themselves. And my journey began with a father who was an alcoholic and quite a violent man. And so because I was a fairly spirited kid, always wanting to get the last word in, so I used to get a lot of beatings. And, even with my resilience, it actually got down, and so I started to go into myself. And it was a time when I just finished. I was all bruised and battered, And I just retreated in my bedroom, and this voice came in and started, you know, it was a really soft and gentle and loving voice. And he said, and the voice said, you know, this is your journey. There may be pain in this at the moment, but you'll reflect back in time to realize that your parents and the environment you're in are exactly the place you need to be in order to grow and to understand why you are here. And so that sort of gave me a bit of comfort. And then that voice stayed with me for the next 60 years, and it evolved into a much larger picture. You could say that it wasn't, I didn't know what it was then. It was just simply that voice deep inside of me that allowed me to find the wisdom and the truth about myself, but also about physical humanity, physical life, what it really was. And you could say that my journey for the last 60 years has been walking in two worlds, between the world of the physical and the world of the non-physical, and understanding how one interfaces with the other, one affects the other. In fact, one creates the other. And, you know, all of the stuff about co-creation is only a recent event. I never knew much about that until only just in the last 10 years. But essentially, my journey was to explore the world, observe the world, interface to the world to understand one thing. I was the creator of that reality. I created everything. I created the whole journey, the whole experience, the whole bang lot. And part of that was, you know, observing myself functioning in that particular way. You could say my journey was inherently introspective on the basis that I began to understand fully that there was only one criteria to life. And that was whatever you think, whatever you feel, whatever your intentions are, that's what you create. Whether you're conscious or unconscious, you create those. Without any reservation, without exclusion. Everything is your dominion of experience and of reality. Now, that's a really powerful place to understand, that you have that much power, that you are the navigator, the architect, the sculptor of your reality experience. But the major difference between myself and there are many others, you know, that are waking up, is that we're beginning to become conscious of that ability and be able to harness that. When you're conscious of it, you have to play with it. You know, it took me quite a number of years, nearly 20 years, to be able to harness that ability, that frequency, and be able to deploy it in the physical world. You could say that I'm on that springboard now. This is the, you know, I'm 72 and I started this when I was 69. So this next 30 years, if I can survive it, is my entry into applying everything that I have been taught, observed, and experienced, and being able to share that with humanity. What I'm sharing is not only my own personal wisdom, my own experience of what it is like to be a human and see the world through different eyes and experience it through different ears, but also the fact that I'm blessed with having the ability to transmit this frequency, which is pure love, and to be able to have that experience and share that experience. Remember, I've never been a public channel. This is a very recent emergence, and that I'm now propelling myself into the plane of the global experience in order to share a message which has been given to humanity millions of times, but they haven't heard it. And it's been given through many different prophets and avatars and people over the last 20,000 years, and it still haven't heard it. And today, predominantly, most of the population of this planet still can't hear it.
Yes, we need. Yes, we need. I just want to say that, you know, this message of love and heart-centered life needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated, because, as you said, it has been shared from different voices, but we haven't integrated yet completely. So there are people who are awakened, as we were, you know, saying between us in our previous exchange. There are people who are awakened to this, but there are also lots of people who are not. And we who went through these awakening experiences, we have the task to share them with others so that we can open our other hearts too, and they can start listening, and they can start viewing the world with different eyes and living life from, I always say, 180-degree new perspective, which is from the mind to the heart. Yeah.
Mm. You know, it's very humbling to be in this place, because I've taken on a job or a mission which I didn't have to do. I was very happily retired. My wife and I built a new house, and we live in a really lovely part of Australia, and I didn't have to do this. In fact, when I was delivered the mission, it was a 3-hour download, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I just left it because my arm was tired. And so I left it, went back to it and read it. And 3 days later, it was something like downloaded a business plan. It was in 6 stages. It was this block and that block, and you go from here to there to there to there for the next 30 years. And I scratched my head. And you know what? I sat on that for 13 months. 13 months exactly. And because it was so overwhelming, I didn't know where to start. So at the end of 13 months, I called in Sol and said, hey, you and I we're going to have a conversation. I said, if you want me to do this, I expect you to marshal all the resources. That is the team that I've built, which are the infrastructure of thing, the necessary skills, the community, the movement. I want you to begin to bring those into my experience, into our experience. You see, the thing about co-creation is not me, because all soul is all of you. It's the voice that you have not heard. And I'm just simply a better than average frequency generator and transmitter. I've had 60 years of practice, and I'm still in an apprenticeship. You know, it's still learning from this. So all I do is deliver the message, and continue to deliver the message in all sorts of capacities and all sorts of breadth, and the depth and breadth. But I also provide people with the space to allow them to experience the process of re-engaging, because there is a process by which you can re-engage with your source self. It's a frequency delineation, it's a frequency jump point. And it doesn't sit in meditation, it doesn't sit in visualization. It's something completely different. And what we want to do is teach people that. And after that, we will try and engage people in understanding how the process of communicating with source itself. Can you imagine if we had 300 million people who could channel the wisdom and the inspiration from the source directly, not having to rely on other so-called authors or influencers or gurus or authorities, that everybody in that 300 million and beyond with their own authority. But essentially, as a collective, we engage in empathetic communication. In other words, we get the same message and we get it exactly in the same way. And we respond and act to that message in the physical world, and therefore create changes by a new form of behavior and action that is more in alignment with the reverence of life and the planet, and even allowing others who have not yet got there to be who they are in terms of living in a place of acceptance of where they are. But therefore, we're not pushing this, we're actually inviting them into this space.
Before to go further, I believe it's important to share as well for the people who are watching us that when we go through these processes of transformation, of embodiment of truth, of receiving messages, downloads, of becoming aware of who we are and which is our purpose in the world, it's very important to allow us a time of integration. To me, it was like for you, you took a break of 13 months, and I also took a break of maybe, more than a year after I received my Heartstorming, because it was so potent that at the beginning, like you, I didn't really know how to manage, how to work with it, And so naturally, I've seen it, after a couple of years, I naturally took a space to integrate, to understand myself better, to understand the messages better, and then to truly be able to incarnate that truth that I received. So I want to share this with the audience. It's important that you allow yourself the natural time, the natural rhythm, I love to call it, so that this transformation that you are living can incarnate within you, and you can embody your truth with the rhythm which is your own, which is unique and can be compared to the one of anyone else. So, yes, said that, Bob, I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into the concept of intuition that we just discussed between us before this live interview. And you are teaching and sharing with people about intuition as a sense to develop and as our own internal teacher, tutor, truly, like a mentor that is within us 24/7. So I'd love for you to share with our audience how they can harness the power of their intuition, how to establish a relationship with it, and how to use it in daily life to empower this embodiment of their own truth.
Okay. The best way to answer that, Silvia, is to also give you my experience of it and how it started. Now, back in after I was in clinical practice for almost 13, 14 years, I opened up to intuition. I actually became a really, really good medical intuitive. I didn't know what the term was until somebody else defined it, but I was very good at intuitive diagnosis for diseases and emotional states and the core origins of diseases. That evolved, excuse me, sort of organically in the field of a clinical practice which I had in Sydney, based around pain management and chronic disease. And I was running an alternative practice, and this particular thing opened up. It evolved because a lot of my clients were senior managers of large banks and financial companies, and one particular fellow who was the CEO of a large insurance company, when I told him about a damage he'd done to a knee, a football injury he had done at the age of 6. And he just asked me, how did you know that? He said, well, I can see it. I read energy, and energy contains information. So it's about learning to interpret that. Now, fortunately, I also had a medical background, so I can turn that information into medical facts and therefore show them in medical physiology exactly what's going on and the state of the body, where it is, the disease nature, and where it's going to progress to. You could say that the clinical practice was the groundwork that opened up all of this information. And to a degree, if I recall, I asked for it because I found this whole thing about medical practice and things so convoluted, and so, the medical system doesn't know much. Intuition knows a lot. And so I asked, so in a particular way, you can say, I intended to evolve in this direction. I set an intention. And it might not have been absolutely focused and conscious at the time, but I remember that I said, there's got to be a better way, let it happen. And so all of this stuff started to appear. Okay, blah, 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 move forward about 13 to 15 years. And that meeting with that CEO ended up me doing side coaching in business. I started with him. He introduced me to more CEOs, and I would pop around after work at night and the weekends, and I'd coach these guys in business intuition. And some of them were in the stock market, so I taught them how to use intuition in the stock market in selecting stocks and shares. So they did really well. And then, for no reason whatsoever, the voice or soul then said, it's time for you to close this practice down and move to the next level, to the next part. And this is what has happened to me all my life. For no reason whatsoever, no logical reason, I had to go and travel around the world for 10 years. And then I came back and I went into the pharmaceutical industry. For no reason, just simply because I was pointed in that direction. Then I left Western Australia to come to Eastern Australia. For no reason. I didn't have any reason to go there, just that impulse. So my whole life has been about moving by this internal impulse to move there with no logical reason. Now, not everybody can do that, because I started with that impulse at 10 and I learned very quickly to follow it. Otherwise, things just didn't work out the way they should. So the impulse was a navigation tool, which I probably also intended once I connected with it and realized it was a really powerful tool. And it was really my teacher, my mentor, and my navigator. And in fact, the story emerges into the day I was asked to close the practice, and I didn't. I actually, because it was a really good practice, I was booked out 6 weeks ahead, and I wasn't, the local me didn't want to give it up. Now, I did nothing different for the next 6 weeks, but the practice just dwindled away. It just got less and less people coming, and I said, okay, fine. And so I shut it down. Then I sat in my unit in Sydney for 3 months, waiting for something. Waiting, and this practice used to pay the rent and everything else. And that 3 months taught me trust. I really have to trust this system. And I've had 60 years of practice in trusting it, and a few moments in that time when I didn't trust it and things didn't go according to the way I would prefer them to. So anyway, so that builds trust, that builds confidence. around the third month, I sat down and I got this massive download for 3 days. And I used to just write freehand. And when I looked at virtually 3 pads of materials, I actually had downloaded 3 courses. One in teaching medical intuition, one in business, and one in generic, what I call normal intuition, and then a specialized course in channeling. Now, that's when I started to kick it off, and I started building a small practice in my unit. I could manage 20 people, but 6 weeks later it was 40 and I couldn't get any more people in. So I gravitated to a public training area and then started teaching around Australia. Now, the essence of the story was that I have never been trained by any physical human in the art of teaching intuition. I've never read a book. In fact, I rarely read books. The reason being is books are usually a combination of other people's material and a little bit of inspiration from the author from a download. And the only time I've read a book was, I used to collect books, but I'd rarely read them. I'd look at a page and I'd realise, of course, that, hey, I knew that. And I had channeled that 2 years earlier. So they were just simply elements of verification of what I'm receiving. And, I'm still human. I'm still, curious as to whether I'm on the right track. So I used to use books as a bouncing board to see if I was getting the information. But essentially, I channeled all the material and then applied it and used it in training courses around Australia and New Zealand and for almost to 2002. And but essentially, there's intuition and there's intuition. And the nature of the courses I taught were more than just, so intuition is simply a gut feeling. It's a yes and no, switch on, switch off. You get a gut feeling, do this or do that. Yes or no, up or down, in and out. That's the most simplest form. And there's the more emergent forms of intuition where you get frequency downloads of words, or you get images, and then you get symbols. So it gets a little bit more complicated if you don't understand what your internal landscape is and what your strengths are. Most people have 1 or 2 what I call internal senses that they're strong at, and the others are really weak. You could say that intuition is an underdeveloped muscle. It really is poorly understood, and poorly, people don't know how to train it in terms of getting the best out of it. So basically I taught that. I taught them, so when you have a muscle, let's go teach it to become more efficient. We'll start with what you have, and then we'll evolve it. Now, when I was teaching medical practice, I'll give you an illustration. I met a lady who actually could smell diseases. And she had almond, that was this disease, rose, which was that disease. There was all sorts of different smells. And she had about 30 of them. And she could smell it. And she said, that smells like cancer, or that smells like an infection. Okay, so she had all these 30 diseases. Now I said, well, we can work with that. First of all, you need to take that information and not just link it to a disease. Where is the disease? How far advanced is the disease? So I taught her to learn the art of understanding the human physiology. So that took about a year. And then she could actually describe the disease from a medical point of view that made it really valuable for her to interface to doctors who could treat diseases they didn't understand. And so we evolved her. By the end of the 2-year period I worked with her, she had 400 smells. Oh. She had a huge library of smells. But each smell was, there were smells and multiple smells, if you can understand that. There were different layers of the smells. and she could diagnose a cancer at a particular stage, and where it was in the body, whether it had shifted to other areas of the body, metastasized, and actually could even smell whether that person was going to survive or not. That's the extent of the condition. But that required guidance to guide her into that, and she needed to do what I call the exercises to balance that particular skill. That's a specialized skill, but generic intuition already exists in us. It's all there. What people need to in the way we're going to teach it, is to establish a base point, a building block, and then we get them to understand what their intuitive language is. The more emotional languages are relatively, when you get emotional feelings, the gut, they're generally what I call on and off switches. They tell you to do this or to do that, or this feels good, doesn't feel good, or go down here, don't go down here. And that's a very simplistic, and that particular sort of system is a survival intuition. It keeps you safe. The more complex intuitions would engage a stream of information about a particular question, topic, or issue, or problem, or circumstance. These are different levels of complexity, and that complexity means that you've got to understand exactly the nature of the condition, and also we taught one thing that is often misunderstood. Intuition is based on intuitive questions. If you're not asking the right questions, your intuition's not going to give you the appropriate answers. So intuition is as important in the question as it is in the answer.
I've got a question, actually.
Okay.
Yes. How can we know which is the right question? I mean, based on what? To receive the right answer. Is there, a pattern or something to use to ask this question?
The answer to that is, Silvia, trust. Part of the learning, part of the process of evolving intuition is learning to trust it implicitly. All of you have done this.
Yes.
You have got intuition, and then your little monkey mind starts getting in the way, and you go and do something else, and you say, I wish I had listened to my intuition. Well, that's an indication how, part of that journey, and you have to teach monkey mind to be quiet. The intuition is very soft. It's very quiet in its voice. Monkey mind is one that screams at you. It's really loud and says, look at me, I've got all the answers, when it really hasn't. It's
okay, because I want to say something here that may be hopefully helpful. I mean, I have never questioned that my questions could have been wrong. As you said, I always trust that what I ask is the right question for that moment. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't ask it. So I don't know if it is because I'm used to use my intuition, and maybe someone who is not will doubt. I mean, is this the right question, or could it be another one? But I always trust that what emerges is the right thing, so the right question.
But see, that's because you're one of the... some people have the ability to organically evolve intuition. You see, mothers, women who have children are better at it because these children can't speak. So they have to intuit the data that little sibling is giving them. And women get better at it, particularly from the age of when they start bearing children and having children and raising children. That begins that natural, organic ability to just know. See, there's different levels of intuition. The most one that I use is what I call infinite knowing. I just know.
Yes.
You know, there isn't a doubt in it. There isn't a yes or a no or black and white. I just know. It's like an absolutism. It's absolutely, I know.
Yes.
And I have no need for doubt. I have no need to investigate. I said, that's a knowing.
You know it, and you don't need, exactly, you don't need
Don't need anything else
yeah.
to do that. And that's probably what I call the pinnacle of intuition. If you can build intuition into a knowing system, then and that is really possible. But where I'm taking this is about intuition is not just about determining, you know, the nature of somebody's disease, or playing the stock market, or intuiting conditions in a business to produce better profits. There's a bigger part to it, and the intuition is part of one thing that is unique, and one of several things that is unique to humanity, and that's not available throughout the rest of the mammal kingdom, and that is the ability to use intuition as a navigation tool, a mentoring tool, and a learning tool. You know, it's all there. Yeah. Our local minds and the information and the capacity of our minds at the local level is so limited that we have no idea that we have no idea. We really know nothing. We think we may. If you read every book on this planet from from beginning to end, you would still know nothing. You would still know nothing. And if you were able to download the whole of the internet library, you would still know nothing, because the knowledge of source is totally infinite. But you see, in that system, you access the library of all possibilities. That's where it lives. And the library of all possibilities is the library that allows us to innovate, co-create, and evolve. Yes. Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to mimic source consciousness. You know, and I say to you, what you experience, source experience in a microsecond. So if there's 7 billion of us having experiences, that's how universes grow. Source expands as you expand. You know, we're just simply conduits for source experience. Now, it works the other way around, except we don't see. We have this firewall. We cannot see that we can access all of the same material. So we are experience generators for source, but source also is able to send material to us, but we don't understand that that is available to us. Yeah. And the moment that you do, if you could say this, if I'm going to give you a Kickstarter to this whole thing, is when you focus on the intention, and this has to be delivered from the heart, and you open up to receive the desire to receive from source as your true form of inspiration, your true stream of consciousness, your true stream of knowledge. You and source are co-creating. That moment you are in source, your source self, because source is only you, but it's another frequency, completely different frequency. But that moment you set that intention, you open up the space to the infinite possibilities that source will create for you in your physical world. All the parameters and all the material and all the opportunities for you to evolve into that particular place. Yes. So the inner tutor is indeed what you are, but you haven't discovered it. Because I would say, if you turn 7 billion people into this planet and turn on the inner tutoring system, first of all, the innovation on this planet would go through the roof. You would never see so much art and technology that is, because it combines with the heart. So all man-made innovations become centric to the global experience of living with the planet and with mankind as one complete organism, one complete system of consciousness that are in love with each other. You know, we are in love with each other, and therefore we work with each other. And so when you open that dimension, you're going to have a different world to where we are right now. So the inner tutor is that place that would probably eliminate the need for third-party books, third-party gurus, third-party everything, because everybody's in tune. Everybody gets very similar data. They all have their specific level of interest. And so everybody, you know, one person might drive that Inner tutorage in the direction of technology development or environment development or repairing the ecology. So they all take different streams of that information and evolve it. But the key point here is that that person's stream, whether it's helping the environment, is because he's in contact with another part of himself, and his heart is locked into, and his heart is connected to humanity. He is in fact, or she is in fact, in service to all of humanity. And that's the primal imperative. The moment we begin to understand that as a collective, if we serve each other to lift the frequency of this planet, we will. And that requires, you know, it requires change agents to begin that process. A bit like putting, if you want to make water fizzy, you need an agent. So you put bicarb of soda and you'll get bubbly water. Okay? So it's a catalyst for change. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I want, in fact, to summarize with some points. I took a lot of notes. And just for the audience to say about this intuition factor. So ask for it, then set the intention from the heart, you know, that you will, and be open to receiving wherever
that's the key. You need to allow yourself to receive this. Yeah. Most people, most of the planet is taught to give, and receiving is not really a great.
So this is the time to receive it. And I'm the first one, I raise my hand because I'm the first one who is practicing in this, receiving more. Then follow the internal impulse. This is key point as well. When we receive, also, you know, say, okay, this is what I received, now I'm acting accordingly. And then trusting that what comes is right for us, that the questions we ask are the right questions, that there is all this divine rhythm that delivers at the right moment. And then finally, I love how all this process reinforces our confidence, the confidence in our own internal power, ability of being creators. And also I felt a lot of expansion as you were talking, you know, as we are opening to these infinite possibilities. So it's self-expansion, which is parallel to universal expansion. So I love this. Now, I had to wrap up because I've almost finished, you know, this time together, and I'd love to pick a card intuitively from my deck and see what's the message here for us. Just briefly, one card for us all, as I love to do all the times. And I love it. Here it is, Bob. This card is wisdom. It comes with the divine message of the animal world. We have an owl, and it says, there is sacred wisdom within you. listen to it, and act according to it. And I love that it's number 3. So like the Trinity, you know, it's about ourselves, this higher power, and also the outcome, what we receive, and the creation. Can I call it like this? And
yes, in fact, from a Pythagorean numerology point of view, the number 3 value, which is actually 300 million, if you work out the numbers, that's a 3.
Yes.
If you take that and use that to 3 to the power of 9, this is 1 and 2, it's also a 3. And if you look at the word, the symbol for Om, which is a 3, now 3 means the body, mind, and spirit. It is the actual integration of all factors that create life. And it is actually the springboard. The power of 3 is a springboard for humanity to move into a new age of consciousness.
Yeah, I love
it. It's been in our movement now for a long time. So I'm just explaining that 3 is a fundamental number of our movement. We formed, we formed it around 3. Yeah.
So, Bob, I thank you so much to, share your wisdom with us. And to say goodbye, would you like to, I don't know, share something of you, offer something to the audience, share maybe a final message? We have just a couple of minutes.
Well, there's 2 things I'd like to do. Is first of all, I'd like to have this opportunity to be available to you, and if you'd like me to come back, I'd like to share more. And secondly, there's also, if you're interested and if your audience is interested, I can come back and channel Sol.
Yeah, directly. I'd love this.
Okay. That is, we also have a community that people might be interested into. If they go onto Facebook and look for Co-Creation Global Community, that's where a lot of people are coming in. That is the basis. Okay. You see, we're co-creating. This is not me. It's not even my team. It's about the community that's going to create this global movement. And we're sponsoring that. We're not managing it. We're sponsoring that. Okay. And we're allowing people to come in and be part of that community, to express themselves, to become leaders in it, to become co-creators in it. So we're building the co-creation system in that community. So, it's an invitation. Yeah. The only thing I can say to you in parting, the greatest thing you can do for yourself is to love yourself. In that space, in that love of yourself, you are loving your true nature. That is source consciousness. When I transmit soul, I transmit the love that you are. I transmit the words that you don't hear. I transmit the understanding that yet you're to discover. That's all I do. In loving yourself, you open up the options and the infinite possibilities to receive the gifts that you are meant to have. This world was never meant to have suffering. It just sort of emerged. And if people really want to build a greater world, it can only happen by getting together and agreeing and working together it's like a river. We need to form a river that begins to flow. And, rivers, they just cut their way through all sorts of obstacles. Yes. And we're all going to one place. We're all going to the sea, and that means we're all going back to source anyway. That's the configuration of life. So that's my blessing, my last thing. Love yourselves. Yes. Okay.
So let's love ourselves and let's open up to receiving. I love to wrap up like this. Thank you so much, Bob. And for all the audience, I'll post the link to the Facebook community so they can, join other people. and start flowing and start expanding. And I see you with part number 2 with love channeling. Would be truly, truly nice. We have to arrange it. And this is it for today. So from myself and from Bob, I'll see you the next time, and stay tuned and connected to your heart. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.